My guest today on Intersections is Major Ira Barrow, retired. Together with his wife, Major Amy Barrow, the Barrows were active Salvation Army officers for many, many years. We're going to learn a bit more about all that over the course of the next few moments together. Major Barrow is of that lineage of Barrows that come from Gambo. And those of us in the Salvation Army in Newfoundland and Labrador, we know the name Barrow as being a pretty solid Salvation Army name. Welcome, Major Barrow.
Thank you.
Right off the top, we would like to acknowledge that Major Amy is unable to be with us today. Major Amy has not been well in recent days, and so we wish her the very, very best, and as always, leave her in God's capable hands. So, you and Amy had a lifetime together as a Salvation Army active officers. Can you tell us, first of all, how did you meet Amy?
We met at the Congress in Toronto in 1967, and we met in an elevator.
Wow, that's quite an elevator speech then, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, met in an elevator, and so then things progressed, and how much time passed before you married?
1 year and a month.
1 year and a month. Wow. And that had something to do with regulations, I would imagine, hey?
Yes, to some degree.
So, yeah.
Yes, she was serving in Ontario, and I was here at the training college next door. And the Salvation Army, we didn't ask for her to be transferred to Newfoundland. They transferred her here early in '68, and then with 6 months after that we're engaged, and 3 months after that we're married.
Wow. And so tell us a little bit about your lives together as active Salvation Army officers, the kinds of appointments you had, where it took you, and some of the highlights.
We had a very brief time in Corps work in Musgrave Harbour, Newfoundland, and we were transferred to editorial in Toronto, in Oakville rather, where we spent 8 years, and then we were transferred to London, England, where we again were in editorial work for a 2-year period, and for reasons unknown to us, we were transferred back to St. John's, and we came to the training college. We had 5.5 years there, and then it was at THQ and editorial again, and back to St. John's to Grace Hospital, and back to Toronto to the Heritage Centre, where we retired from there.
Wow, that's a pretty varied career.
Yes.
Very varied. Thank you for sharing that. And when a person thinks about life's vocation, there are all kinds of things that people think about. But in your case, something special came your way, and it was a calling to ministry. Can you tell us a little bit about that call, and what was it that really cemented that in your heart and mind?
I was attending university, and almost daily, this would come to my mind, this sense of a calling. It wasn't at a Salvation Army meeting or any time like that. It was when I would be walking from university back to my residence or in class, and this kept coming back to me, and I tried to resist it, and I tried to analyze it, and eventually I realized it was the call, and the only way I was going to be happy was to say yes.
Okay. Was there a particular moment of confirmation where you said, all right, this is it, I give?
Not exactly like that. I remember being at the temple for the dedication service of the session being commissioned that year, and I didn't have the same sense that I had when I was walking the street St. John's and feeling the sense of the call. And then something said to me, well, you don't need to have an emotional experience. You've had this call, and now this is an act of the will. And it was that act of the will that I signed on the dotted line.
Very good. And how many years of officership did you enjoy?
Well, I had 40 years active service.
Right.
And of course,
and
18.
Of course, 19 now is
yes.
Retired, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And so following retirement, you and Amy settled back in this general area, and you found St. John's Citadel as your church. What was it about St. John's Citadel? Were there historical roots, or was there something about the ministry here at this core that attracted you?
It was both. I remember we came to the Corps when we got married back in 1968. I attended the Corps when I went to university. But when we were retiring, we had a call from Betty Lethbridge. Said, when you come back to St. John's, come back to St. John's Citadel. And Amy said, that's where we're going.
Wonderful. And I know Amy has enjoyed time in the songsters.
Yes, very much.
Here. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So, Ira, the faith journey evolves within the person over time. And there's growth, one would hope, in that process. And as you have been on this journey and this road of faith for quite a considerable period of time now, tell us a little bit how your faith has changed and matured over time.
Well, first, when I became a Christian, I would sort of get very quickly condemned for if I didn't think exactly right and so on. And then I began to realize, well, you know, being a Christian doesn't mean you're going to be angelic and you have to grow. It's a growing process, and it's not an instant reaching of a certain height. So I learned a lot from watching the lives of other people, particularly my own father. I would come downstairs in the morning, he would be knelt by the couch in the kitchen somewhere praying. He was a non-educated man, but he had a great faith. And then when I became an officer, I was stationed at Whitburn, and I went to Fairhaven as an outpost. And I used to stay with a man there, Uncle Billy Smith. And he could not know his own name if it were on a billboard. But he knew God so well. And I discovered that it was through prayer, and he couldn't read the scripture, but when he went to church, he listened to the scripture read. His wife read the scripture at home to him. And he was absorbing the scripture, and he was praying. And I realized that's the way to growth, is to get into the scriptures and to pray. And I learned from the lives of other people.
So often the case, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here you are at this stage of life now, and this, as with every stage, brings its own challenges and its own concerns. And here's growth again, because at least my experience is that every stage of life causes me to experience new things. Not necessarily good things, but new things. And so talk to us a little bit about, here you are at this stage of your life, and what role does faith play for you on a daily basis?
It's a very big thing. It's probably some days it's the only thing I have. But I find that as I get older, I'm changing my view about many things. I become more open-minded, which is usually you think when you get old you don't. But I have become more. You've been along the road, you've seen it all, and you sort of view life a little differently. So my faith has been very important to me in that, I mean, I have a lot of pain personally, so physical pain. So I just trust the Lord to see me through each day. And also, as you get older, you begin to lose family and friends. A lot of my friends have died, officer friends, family members, 3 since Christmas. So if you begin to realize in moments like these, you need an anchor. And you find that anchor is your faith.
Yeah, be very sure your anchor holds and grips the solid rock.
Right.
It's an old line from a chorus they used to sing
Right.
years ago, and some of the old saints of the church, we would call them, you could almost really see them enter into that. We don't sing these things quite the same as we did back in years ago, but the truths contained in them live on.
Yes.
Live on. So Ira, as we begin to wrap this up, if there's somebody watching here who's struggling with faith and experiencing, and they may have been along the road so far and experiencing doubts because of various things that happen and causes them to question faith and question God, do you have some advice or some recommendation for them?
Yes, but to introduce that fact, my mother-in-law was a saint. I have the kind of mother-in-law I can't poke fun at her. She was such a good woman. I mean, she wouldn't want me to say this. She's gone to glory now, but we have her old Bibles, and she's read them through and through and through. We've discovered, and they're marked and marked. And as she read the Old Testament in particular, she was able to siphon from that truth. Where you read the Old Testament, some of it can be very confusing. You question, why is that there? But she was able to siphon the good things. And I would say to someone who's struggling to read the Scriptures and draw from the Scriptures the truths of the gospel, the truths of God's grace, God's love, and those things will help you along the way.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to share with us today from your experience. And, please give our very, very best and warmest regards to Amy.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.